just one little thing that I haven't had time to investigate yet. You can use as your objective function to have high activity in the positive phase and low activity in the negative phase. And if you do that, it'll find nice features in the hidden units. Or you can have as your objective function to have low activity in the positive phase. If you do that, it'll find nice constraints. If you think about what physicists do, they try and understand nature by finding apparently different things that add up to zero. Another way of saying it is that they're equal and opposite, but if you take force and you subtract mass times acceleration, you get zero. But that's a constraint, okay? So if you have two sources of information, one of which is force and the other which is mass times acceleration, you'd like to have hidden units that see both those inputs and that say zero, no activity. And then when they see things that don't fit the physics, they'll have high activity. That'll be the negative data. So that's called a constraint. And so if you make your objective function B have low activity for real things and high activity for things that aren't real, you'll find constraints in the data as opposed to features. So features are things that have high variance and constraints are things that have low variance. A feature is something that's got higher variance than it should and constraint has lower variance than it should. Now, there's no reason why you shouldn't have two types of neurons. One's looking for features and one's looking for constraints. And we know with just linear models that a method like principal components analysis looks for the directions in the space that have the highest variance. They're like features. And it's very stable. There's other methods like minor components analysis that look for directions in the space that have the lowest variance. They're looking for constraints. They're less numerically stable. But we know that it pays to have both. And so that, for example, is a direction that might make things work better. But there's about 20 things like that I need to investigate. And my feeling is until I've got a good recipe for whether you should use features or constraints or both, what's the most effective way to generate negative data and so on, it's premature to investigate really big